Robots Radio presents...
Today's chat is brought to you by the support of all our Twitch subscribers. Through the patronage you provide the Focus Fire chat team through the Twitch platform, we are able to provide you with the weekly podcast as well as the website and other aspects of Focus Fire chat. If you have any interest in becoming a subscriber of the FFC and gaining access to some exclusive features over in the Discord server, please be sure to visit our Twitch account and click on the subscribe button. If you're an Amazon Prime member, remember that you do have a free subscription to Twitch every month that can be used for this. And for those of you who are already subscribers, thank you again for your generosity.
You may have heard the whispers of guardians gathering in the shadows, exploring the mysteries of this world and the worlds which surround us. We are all in search of truth. Sometimes we need to focus that search. Focus that fire. And so we come together. Welcome to Focused Fire Chat.
Welcome to Focus Fire Chat, recorded live on August 7th, 2020 over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. As always, I want to give a big shout out to our live chat here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us once again. This week's episodes are going to be focused around exploring the lore in Halo that are leading up to Halo Infinite. This particular episode will serve as what we have come to call the intro session of the week's exploration. Before we go any further, however, let's run through a quick introduction of who all we have with us on the show. As always, this is your host, Blue Crew 86.
And this is the currently trying to figure out something to use as her name because she didn't think about it yet. It's just green. It's just green this week. Let's forget about it.
Hold on to your butts.
Hold on to your butts.
And last
well,
but
I mean,
definitely...
if you wanted to go the Halo route, I could give you a quote from Johnson if you want.
No.
I mean, I had Carolina
PG.
as my background. I could do a text thing, or I guess it would not have been text. Who was it? Was it Griff? Protect Me Cone. Protect me Cone, green-eyed music lover. There we go.
And last but definitely not least, in the hot seat as guest co-host, we have our good friend pensHALO. Pens, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Mm-hmm. We have to have you here.
Yeah,
You're
I was about
obligated.
to say, obviously. Now that we have all that out of the way, I want to actually shift focus back over to Pens. It's because usually with intro sessions, we set aside some time to get to know the guest. Pens has been on for, a handful of times.
I think this is five or six.
Yeah, basically every Halo episode we know Pens has been on, and then there's been a few extra on top of that. Mm-hmm. But give us a quick rundown for those who, I know there was a couple people who jumped into our chat actually earlier today that were like, "Hey, we just found you guys." So give us a quick rundown of how did you get into game lore, but more specifically Halo?
Well, I've always been one who enjoyed reading and sci-fi, and especially military sci-fi. But really from a game perspective, until the very first one that I started to get into was Star Wars, from X-Wing and TIE Fighter, which kind of led me along with the movies and whatnot. But it actually was Halo. The first time I loaded up Halo CE, and after you escape the Pillar of Autumn and you come out and you open up and you see the skybox, I was amazed. And then I ended up reading Halo: The Fall of Reach by Eric Nyland, and I knew right then and there I was hooked. It reminded me so much of the techno thrillers that I loved from Clancy and Dale Brown and whatnot. So I was just straight up hooked from there. And, yeah. So.
I know both of you, I'm going to toss it to Pens first, but both of you are excited for Halo Infinite. And I want to get your take on what you're most excited to possibly see, what they're going into. Pens, you want to start this off?
I think for me, it's because Halo Infinite is set essentially 3 years in the future from where we left off of Halo 5. I want to see what pretty much what's happened in the universe. You still have, we know that we're fighting the Banished, but what happened with the Created? Mm-hmm. There's talk of the Didact coming back. Plus, and we'll probably get into this in the advanced episode, but where Halo Infinite actually takes place, Zeta Halo Installation 07 that ring is thousands upon thousands of years older than any of the other existing rings, or the rings that are still around. And there's so much potential for a story there. Different things we haven't seen before. And I'm really interested and excited to see how 343 progresses the story, for that. And, but yeah, that's really what I'm looking forward to.
All right. Jay, what about you?
I'm excited to get the Brute equipment back because honestly, the Brute's weapons were some of the most ridiculously fun ones out there. With, what was that, Halo 3, I think, was when, or Halo 2 was when they were introduced, but Halo 3 was when we got to really, like, double down with their stuff.
ODST as well.
Yeah, that's true. But man, the Brute weapons, just because of the aesthetic that the Brutes had, whereas just like that heavy, like it always had like a heavy blade. They had grenade launchers, which were just ridiculously fun in PvP. But then they also had like the Pins, you'll know what it is. It's the Brute Ghost. That was just a giant. It was a giant blade that you could just run things over with. The chopper. Oh my god. I'm like, the Brutes had just like some really cool aesthetics to it. And they also brought, like, when they were introduced with Halo 2, like that was the entire like kind of catalyst to the whole Arbiter situation. You know, the Brutes, because that was it was at Tartarus who was the big bad at that point. Like, I mean, the whole thing with them kind of set into motion a large component of what eventually, in my opinion, was one of the big things that broke the Covenant. Was like, and I mean, like, there's other things that happened outside, but like the Brutes were the betrayal of them to the elites were kind of like in the game world. It kind of was like that happened, then this happened, and it was just like they were very instrumental in that introduction, I guess, of the Arbiter. Okay. And so, like, bringing them back in, even though it's Atriox, and Atriox is such an interesting character, we'll get into his story as well, because Atriox is not, like, the Brutes that we encountered before have been Brutes that were loyal to the Covenant. Atriox is the exact opposite. And one of the things about Atriox is, like, I think Isabel? Was that the AI in Halo Wars 2?
Yep.
She kind of explains it. She does a really good job explaining it, but she made a comment about, like, even at the height of their power, the Covenant weren't able to deal with Atriox. So the fact that we're going up against Atriox via his war chief, one of his war chiefs, is really, I mean, like, this is going to be, it's setting it up to be a very interesting story, because I will be very surprised if it gets done in one title.
Okay.
Well,
unless something may. Well, okay. What this installment of this title, I guess, would be a better way of saying that.
Yeah.
Rather than like a DLC add-on type thing.
Well, because what they have softly alluded to is that this is like, it's Halo Infinite.
Right.
Everything going forward is just going to be basically kind of like how Destiny has gone, where it's adding on to the existing platform.
Sure.
World of Warcraft, all the online games. That seems to be a lot of the AAA titles, whether you like it or not. That kind of seems to be the standard practice that a lot of them are moving towards, for a whole host of reasons. But I can see, like, Halo Infinite, especially since it's going to be an initial launch title on the Series X, we're going to be with it for a while, like, unless they turn something around really quick. Which I don't expect.
That's not a bad thing, though, if you're talking about how people maneuver through titles and whatnot. If you have a classic or a favorite, you're sticking to it most of the time. So I can see why that's a good model that a lot of people are moving towards.
I mean, it's one of the reasons I really like Destiny, is it helps
longevity.
Longevity, but it also it makes the players kind of connect with the interconnectedness of the story. Like, it's not, in Halo 2 this happened, but in Halo 3 this happened. No, it's this happened during this season. or but that season led to this season or whatever. Like,
sure.
That's one of the reasons I love Spartan Ops from Halo 4 was because Spartan Ops took the story of Halo 4 and was like, okay, this is what happened, but then we're not following the Master Chief. We're going to follow a random fire team of your particular, like you were able to customize your Spartan in Spartan Ops, and it was your team doing missions as a Spartan. Like it was an extension of Halo 4's story, and it's still one of my favorite ways that any of them have done that.
Okay, so go for it.
And considering that was the first time anyone's ever done that, really.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a DLC. It was an extension, and no one had ever done that before. And it was a little bit rough in the first half of that season, mainly because of the way they reused maps and things of that nature.
Which I didn't even care.
But it really got good in that second half, and I was really disappointed they never had a season 2. My thoughts on that are, but that's kind of what I'm seeing with Infinite is you're going to kind of see this, kind of like an episodic kind of thing where you go down paths and things like that. So
I think that'll be good, though.
Yeah, and Vuru makes another point, too, is this model also allows them to schedule development properly while the game is live. So it also, from a development standpoint, almost eliminates the need for having crunch. Like, it doesn't eliminate it because you're always going to have crunch, but it's not going to be, the crunch is not going to be so terrible. Like, it's not like...
Right.
Come November, we have to, like, you'll still have deadlines, but it's not like, okay, well, we're going to shift everyone from platform A to platform B.
Right.
We're seeing that with Bungie, with Beyond Light. I mean, they had to shift Beyond Light from, September to November? Or was it?
Yep.
Yeah, but they shifted it, and it's like, that doesn't, I mean, yes, everyone was like, oh, like, we wanted to play it, but it doesn't mean that we don't have a game to play between that time. Whereas, like, if you're going to a completely new, like, Call of Duty, where they do the cyclical year thing, if you don't release it on that schedule, you mess up not only the future schedule, but you also leave people, there's other contracts that get impacted by that, too.
Coding-wise, I'm sure that it has developments and stuff that happens within the engines that I'm sure really mess with it, though. So I can imagine that there's going to be challenges either way, whether or not you start with a brand new engine or format within a game title versus an ongoing one. I know you guys are laughing because you're both gamers.
No. So the reason I'm laughing is I literally just sent Pens this video a couple days ago where not good news came out about like Halo's base code. And so the thing is like with games like this, like big games, like it's ridiculous how much code is actually still from the original batch. Like, because it just gets grandfathered in with like the whole system. Like it's because they don't have time, right? Because of crunch and because the demand is so high. But what that can lead to, and this was kind of one of the things that was I don't remember getting confirmation that this was accurate, but the statement was that a lot of the code in Halo was done by contractors. And so these contractors didn't have any skin in the game, if you will. And so they just basically kit bash stuff. Well, the developers then have to go back and they have to figure out, and to be clear, this isn't just Halo. This is, take your pick on AAA games. And that's what chat's doing. They pulled a Bethesda. Yeah. I mean, Bethesda's not unique in that sense. Like but there's so much code that is grandfathered in from the real, like the base, like even though they're going to the Slipspace engine, which is such a big step above, what was it? Unreal 4 was the one that they were, I mean, like Slipspace looks ridiculous. Like it's an amazing system. But even so, they're still going to have old code, because the other thing is to remember is like this is a cross-platform, or not cross-platform, but cross-generation game. So like the Xbox One is going to be able to play Halo Infinite. It's just not going to be able to play it at I think it was 120 FPS.
That's ridiculous.
Ridiculous. But
real
sorry.
quick, I'm going to cut you guys off. I got one more question for you, and it's probably in some ways the harder one, but is there anything that you're specifically worried about coming up with the game? You have a minute each.
Okay.
I mean,
honestly,
I know my answer,
think,
so yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it's pretty obvious that you can tell that they're leaning pretty heavily on nostalgia. You can see that in the in the graphics. You can hear that in the music. Not necessarily gameplay, but things like that. And I don't want them to lean on nostalgia so much, just living off of what Halo 1, 2, and 3 were, or CE 2 and 3. I really enjoyed 4. I had loved the way they took the story. 5 had issues, but it had good ideas there. It just wasn't executed right. I just want to see them continue to innovate and not be scared to innovate.
Okay.
So that's probably it for me.
Yeah, my biggest concern is basically that. My biggest concern is just dealing with the community blowback that I know is going to happen. Like, and that's me basically kind of dodging the question, but really honestly, I don't have anything. I've been completely happy with everything that Bungie did with Halo, that 343 has done with Halo. I've loved every single installment of Halo. I've had my gripes about every single installment of Halo. Like, equally different gripes, but equally the number of gripes. But there's a reason I don't get super involved with Halo's community, and I don't see that changing. And it's not so much me worried, it's actually me sad, because Halo's an amazing game, but it's like the community can just can get really toxic sometimes about really stupid stuff.
Right.
Oh yeah. Trust me, those
black undersuits.
Oh God.
That caused a problem?
Oh, don't.
Oh yeah. Yes.
There was a reason that was specifically called out in the blog. Like that.
Green, I'll be glad to talk to anybody about some of this stuff, because I have a tendency to get really passionate when I start hearing some of this stuff. It drives me up a wall. But if we actually want to get to the topic, we should not go down this road.
Like, that's a good spot to stop, so we can do an ad break real quick. And my timer just went off, so we'll be right back with, actually, I think we're starting with Halo 3, right?
Yeah, we're going to do just a recap real quick.
Cool. So, be right back, guys.
Hey Guardians, we are the Destiny Show Podcast, a weekly podcast about all things Destiny 2. We invite amazing guests from the Destiny community to share their stories and discuss the latest topics from the world of Destiny. Check us out on Apple, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, or live on Twitch every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. We will see you Starside.
And we're back, and everybody's still giggling a little bit because Pens is slightly triggered and ready to go. But I'm gonna be the mom, and I'm gonna shift your face back towards Halo 3. That's where we're starting, since we're doing kind of a recap on it. So let's start in, 2553?
Yeah. So the lead up to Halo Infinite, you start off, the Halo 3 ends in March of 2553 with the destruction of the Flood on the Lesser Ark. But later in 2053, and this kind of leads to what the universe is now, Oni, that wonderful group, instigates a civil war between, they instigate a civil war between some of the remnants of the Covenant. The idea being if they keep them unstable, they won't try to cause a problem with the UNSC.
Sure.
This was specifically with the Sangheili, or the elites. There were two factions. You have Thel 'Vadam, who was the Arbiter, and his Swords of Sanghelios, and then the faction called the Servants of the Abiding Truth. It's an ancient religious order that predated the Sanghelian Shansayum, or Prophets, their war. So they were just two opposing factions, essentially based upon religious lines. The problem is that a Sangheili by the name of Jul Mdama, anyone who played Halo 4 knows who that is, found out that Oni was the one triggering all of this, which ended up causing his wife to get killed. He used this information to form another Covenant faction, essentially to wage war against the UNSC.
So, okay, I'm going to pause real quick. Quick question. So, Jul Mdama is part of the original Covenant that was with Thelvadams?
So originally the Sangheili were a race that viewed the technology of the Forerunners as holy to the point where you don't touch it.
Okay.
This was different than the Shen Xiaoyun or the Prophets. They wanted to use the technology.
Okay.
So, and the Servants of the Abiding Truth, like I said, they didn't believe in tampering with Forerunner technology. But yeah, Joel Mdama was more along the lines of what the Covenant that the UNSC fought were, that he was willing to use that technology, which you see plenty in Halo 4 and in Spartan Ops, to continue the fight. And honestly, if Oni hadn't stuck its nose in it, we may not have had Halo 4. So
interesting.
Thanks, Oni.
So you have the ones who want to use the old tech, the ones that don't want to use the old tech, and then everyone are put on a chessboard, and Oni's like, play.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, though, that is kind of what Oni does in general, or tries to do in general. But you also forgot the Lagoko, who just wanted to eat everything.
Well, yeah.
Hunters.
The Hunters, yeah. No, was that a fractured circle? Was that what that one was? With the Prophets and the Hunter Worms eating the ship?
That was actually in...
What book was that in?
Contact Harvest.
That's right. Yeah.
Contact Harvest. The remnant of Mendicant Bias, a Forerunner AI, discovered...
That's right.
This is when they discovered humanity. This is when the Covenant found out that humanity was supposed to be the inheritors of everything the Forerunners had.
They were completely okay with this.
Mendicant Bias was going to take the... Yeah. The Mendicant Bias was going to take the ship that he was on to find the humans. Well, the Covenant decided no and sent the Lagoko, which will eat technology, in to disable the ship. And that's as short as I can make that story.
Okay. So the Lagoko are...
The Hunter Worms. So, like, Hunters, the big Hunters, those are not actual single entities. Those are entire colonies.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
And
awesome.
they come in pairs.
Yeah, that's why they also come in pairs. But also, if you ever are playing Halo and you punch them in the back, when you see the cords that are in that's actually the worms.
The worms
moving.
That's gross. That's gross.
Well, there's a scene in Halo 5 where you can see the worms forming the Hunter.
Oh, it's so cool.
That is pretty neat. And we won't go into how the Scarab is actually a massive Lagoko colony, but we won't go there.
Can we jump to
the
2554?
Yes.
Point number 2, by the way, guys. We're doing so well.
This is how every Halo episode has gotten.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Okay, so continuing on with Jul Mdama. Like I said, he was searching for ways to become stronger, move forward in using Forerunner technology. Well, they come across the Forerunner Shield World Requiem. They then spend the next 3 years trying to find a way to get into it. Again, this ended up being a Forerunner world where they were hoping to get a lot of technology from to assist them in their fight.
They don't
Moving on
to that until Halo 3.
Nope. July 21st, 2557 is the date they actually get in.
We're going to get there. I'm just jumping ahead. Sorry.
No, not a problem.
2555?
Yeah, so in 2555, at the end of in Halo 3, a portal was opened above Voi in Kenya that allowed the UNSC to travel through to get to the Ark where the final battle was fought. Well, that portal was left open. it ended up that the AI that was in charge of the Ark sent sentinels through the portal to collect resources to restore the Ark back to its glory. A combined UNSC and Swords of Sanghelios team. Fun note, if you ever played co-op in Halo 3, the two you played as 2 Spartans and 2 elites. The 2 elites that were in Halo 3 were the ones that went through the portal along with the Spartans at Voy.
Okay.
So they actually tied the two together.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So they go through and they're able to get the issue resolved. Also in 2555, the location of Installation 07, otherwise known as Zeta Halo, is discovered. And it is also in this point in time that Oni learns of the origins of a Ural-Hane that has been, that the Covenant is hunting by the name of Atriox.
Okay, you're gonna have to... I'm assimilating so much information. Atriox, what race is that?
A brute. The proper name is Ural-Hane.
Okay.
The UNSC calls them brutes.
Okay.
Because, well, yeah.
Because
they look like King Kong.
humanizing.
Well, yeah. It was just slang because they didn't know what the proper name was. And, well, anyone who's fought them in Halo will know that you get to a point that you pop their armor and they go into berserker rage.
Okay.
It's the
Yep.
funniest and best animation ever.
Mm-hmm.
I need to do a playthrough with you guys and just let you guys laugh at me the whole time because I'm going to be that person who just pops it and then runs.
Why do you think
I've been
love
having
watching...
fun laughing at Mylan.
That's what I was just about to say. Why do you think I comment on every Mylan clip that he's posted? The hammer clip when he realized he's like...
I still think the ghost one is my favorite, where he steals the ghost finally and gets across the map, and then another ghost just shoots him as he gets there, and just the look of despair on his face. Just don't celebrate too early.
Nope,
right.
Never do. Okay. So 2556. It's at this point in time that the Forward Unto Dawn was a Chiron-class frigate. That was the frigate that actually took Chief and the Arbiter to the Ark, and it was the one where he got stranded, ended up being stranded in the middle of unknown space.
Right.
When the portal collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
It was found that the Cortana, which Chief was in cryo sleep, Cortana files a report on the history of Forerunners and humans, and it's at this point in time that she starts to exhibit clear signs of rampancy. This actually comes directly from the short Halo Origins 2, which is in Halo Legends. It's a bunch of short clips animated. Actually, they're all from anime studios that put together some small stories that 343 had put together. It's actually really well done.
Nice.
Okay. So, moving on.
Halo
July 21st.
4, right?
Halo 4. July 21st, 2557, my 586th birthday. Cortana awakes John from cryosleep. She does this because they have drifted close to the Shield World Requiem and has detected all the fleet of Jul Madama that are there. A battle ensues. They board the Forward Unto Dawn to try to prevent it to destroy it or at least salvage it. It ends up that Chief fights them off, and it ends up that the Shield World recognizes a reclaimer, human, and scans and then decides to suck everybody into its core. So this brings the Forward Unto Dawn, the Forerunner fleet, essentially opens it up. I'm sorry, not the Forerunner, the Covenant fleet. It opens it up, allowing them to enter. It ends up that the UNSC Infinity, which at that point in time was the newest ship, and UNSC fleet was out looking for Forerunner relics, stations, and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And through a number of broken radio messages, they determine they're trying to warn the UNSC about, don't get caught under the gravity well.
Okay.
Well, to do this, John and Cortana go through a bunch of things to try to disable this. They get to the core of the shield world, and they've determined that's what's causing the interference. They go to shut it down. They shut it down, and it ends up they release the Didact from his cryptum.
Right.
The Didact was a Forerunner general who was who was captured by the Flood and rendered pretty much insane. And he was interred in the cryptum, which is, think of it as a secure vault where he was supposed to sleep and hopefully heal, which he didn't.
I like that. Which he's still cray-cray.
Yeah. A lot of this stuff, this particularly all comes from the Forerunner trilogy written by Greg Bear.
Okay.
It's really, really good, although if you're not used to the way Greg Bear writes, it can be hard to get through. But anyway, the Didact takes control of both the Prometheans and the Covenant forces that were in Requiem. Despite everything John and Cortana John and Cortana recognize he's a major threat. Mm-hmm. However, the current captain of the UNSC Infinity, Andrew Del Rio, didn't see it that way. He wants to retreat back to Earth. Cortana and John, with help from Lasky, who was the second in command, eventually becomes commander of the Infinity, leave and try to stop him.
So it's just the three of them essentially trying to stop him?
Well, just the two. No, Lasky stays. So he gives them a fully equipped Pelican dropship, and the two of them go off. Sorry. It ends up they can't stop him. They're able to hop on a Covenant ship that's leaving, and they end up pursuing the Didact to Ivanov Station, which is where the Halo Ring Installation 03 is. The Didact recovers a Forerunner device called the Composer. The Composer is a device made by the Forerunners that was initially to try to protect them from being infected by the Flood. Right. What it does is it takes biological material and turns it digital. So, but while this initially didn't work in trying to do the restore, what it does do is it allows to take a biological creature, digitize him, and put him into an armored shell, meaning the Prometheans that we fight were actually biological creatures at some point in time.
And do they automatically assume control over them at that point? Do they lose that? One of the things that I was curious of is you mentioned that the Didact took control essentially of that group, right? Like he became the general of that group. Is he physically taking control over them, kind of not necessarily via orc style, but more like the Vex, where it's just not necessarily a hive mind, but kind of assimilated into one?
Probably the best way that I can describe it is because the original Prometheans were the Didact's Forerunner troops that volunteered to be digitized so they wouldn't be infected by the Flood, so they could fight the Flood.
Sure.
So they're not automatons. They are actually basic AI. And it's not like a hive mind like the Vex at all. Each one essentially has, I don't want to say fully its own will, but it's semi-autonomous on its own.
Gotcha.
So the Didact gets hold of the Composer and composes everyone on Ivanov Station minus John. Thanks to some hocus pocus that the Librarian, another Forerunner, who I know we spoke on the last Halo episode I was on briefly, essentially, and going into that is just going down into the rabbit hole. So I'll just say she did some hocus pocus, which allowed him to be immune to being composed. They travel to Earth, and John and Cortana are actually able to stop the Didact. Throughout Halo 4, Cortana's rampancy is getting worse. Rampancy is nothing more than smart AI who are created from a human brain, have a lifespan of 7 years. After 7 years, they start to think themselves to death. They kind of run out of space to do their processing, so in essence, they just start to break down. And you see this throughout Halo 4. The way Cortana is actually, when they get to the point where before they're able to fight the Didact, he's in a shield. To break the shield, Cortana splits off her rampant sections a total of 12 of them into the system to break the shield. So once the shield's broken, he fights the Didact. He's able to defeat the Didact by shoving a pulse grenade into his chest. The Didact falls into a slip space portal, a slip space event that was below the Composer at the time. Before he's able to detonate a Havoc nuclear bomb, because at this point in time, the Didact was actually composing the entire city of New Phoenix. So
I remember some of this from
yeah,
Halo 4. It was that, if I remember right, that was the mission where everyone essentially cried because Cortana just kind of
she died. Just thinking of that mission, the mission's name was Midnight, and that final cutscene always hits me dead in the feels, every time. So John detonates the Havoc nuclear bomb. The main fragment of Cortana, the one that stayed with him, was able to save John by putting him in a hard light bubble. She then dies, and John is recovered by teams from the UNSC Infinity. Going into 2558, this is where we started getting into Halo 04 Spartan Ops that Jay and I spoke about briefly. Essentially, the UNSC Infinity returns for a second tour of Requiem. Spartan 4 teams are sent to dispatched to combat Jul 'Mdama's Promethean Covenant forces. They recover a Forerunner artifact that ends up being a trap that anchors the UNSC Infinity in place. Oni ends up sending Catherine Halsey to the Infinity to research the Forerunner device and assist them. Through this part, she ends up getting into discussions with Jul 'Mdama, and ends up being captured by him when Prometheans teleport onto the Infinity and capture her. They found out that she had been communicating with him, and at this point in time, Sync Oni, or Commander-in-Chief of Office of Naval Intelligence, Saren Osman, who was actually a Spartan 2 washout. She was not a washout. The enhancements did not take for her. It did not severely, and she was actually rehabilitated by Oni.
Oh, so they can actually be rehabilitated at that point? Because I was led to believe
Some
that
of
they
them
couldn't.
Some of them can.
Some of them could.
Yeah, not a very high percentage of them could. There was a few. There were 75 Spartans that went through the enhancements. 33 died. Well, and I'll put quotes around died, because in most cases the coffins that were shot out into space were empty. A number of them were able to be rehabilitated, and actually some of them actually joined the Spartan 2s. Actually, I believe Black Team, which was featured mainly in the comics, was one of them. But she ends up ordering Captain Lasky to locate and terminate Halsey. The commander of the Spartans, Sarah Palmer, takes this and does a solo job for this. Lasky dispatches the Spartan teams Crimson and Majestic, which are the two teams you in Spartan Ops you play as a member of Crimson. Majestic is the kind of like your sister team that is running in parallel with you. They're sent to rescue Halsey. Palmer wounds Halsey before 'Mdama escapes with her, and he in his escape, 'Mdama sends Requiem into the sun there, which is the one part of Spartan Ops that I don't really like, but it is what it is. And it ends, that with Halsey losing an arm at the end because of the wound.
So can I actually pause this for a quick moment, because this is kind of where my knowledge of Halo has basically come to a stop, because I played through Halo 4 and then I got through the start of Halo 5. But before we jump into Halo 5 and the rescue mission for Halsey and everything else going on, I want to do a quick ad break for our Robots Radio family.
The hosts at Robots Radio get a lot of questions from people who are interested in starting their own podcasts about how they can start, how they can grow their audiences, how they can create good content, even what microphone to use and what software to use, things like that. Well, we're changing things up at Robots Roundtable to talk and share about the things that we've learned, the things that work and the things that don't. We're sharing with you our actual real-world experience. How can you launch a show like the Fallout Lorecast and get as many listeners as we did early on and rocket to the top of the charts on Apple Podcasts? How do you create a show in such a crowded marketplace as it is today, as opposed to 10 years ago? We're getting together every week to share our answers with you. Just look up The Podcast Professor, a Robots Roundtable with the hosts from Robots Radio.
And Blue, do you have anything to start this off for the Halo 5 thing now that we're back? And
I mean, this is where a lot of the transmedia of Halo starts really, in my opinion, really starts tying back in and shining. Because you have Hunt the Truth, which is just ridiculously well done. And then you also have, what was it? Nightfall, which was the other one.
Yes.
I actually really liked Nightfall, which is also, going back to the Logoku, you also get to see Logoku there too. But like Nightfall was where you kind of got introduced to Locke, especially, but you also get a little bit of a glimpse of like the terrorist acts that Jewel Madama has kind of inspired, I guess would be the best word for it.
Yeah.
Because during Nightfall, at the beginning, there's an elite basically that does a terrorist bombing on a human colony, and it's a real it's really cool watching Locke's team, which is Fire Team Osiris, which actually,
well, that was still when he was with Oni. He hadn't been with Osiris.
That's right, because
yet.
he wasn't a Spartan at that point, right?
No, he was not a Spartan. He was a Oni fixer.
That's right. That's right. Because they had, was that the old Spartan 2? That was the big dude. So it was like that entire miniseries is actually, I really enjoyed it. Not as much as I enjoyed Forward Unto Dawn, but it was pretty good. But so that kind of gives you the sense of Locke's character, which then, you play Locke counter to Master Chief in Halo 5. In Halo 5, you have Master Chief on Blue Team, which is his original team from way back in the day. They are all Spartan 2s, and then Fire Team Osiris is all Spartan 4s?
Yep, all Spartan 4s.
Which, that's where you have Locke, Buck, Tanaka, and Vale. Green, you'll actually recognize this. Locke is played by, I can't remember his name, but he's the guy who does Luke Cage. The Buck is played by none other than Nathan Fillion. I don't remember Tanaka's character, but I know Vale is Laura Bailey.
Yeah.
And the fun fact there is Laura Bailey plays Vale, who's on Team Osiris, and her husband, Travis, plays Fred, who's on Blue Team. So it's literally a red versus blue situation going on in their household.
That was really, really cool.
I love the...
I think it was Cynthia McWilliams.
Okay.
I think was her voice.
And
Randall 037 was a Spartan from
Randall, that was
former Spartan 2.
Former Spartan 2.
Nightfall. Yes.
So that was my big thing with Halo 5 was like you had the Hunt the Truth podcast / audio drama, which was just mind-bogglingly well done. And I'm trying to think. There were a lot of big names in Hunt the Truth as well. Mark Hamill was in there.
Keegan.
What's his name? He was
Keegan Michael Keegan Peele. He was Keegan Peele, and it was he was
Ben Jerome.
Ben Jerome,
yeah. So that podcast was just and that was a cool podcast because that was again a kind of a throwback that you see that because the main character in the podcast was the PR, like one of the PR contacts that Oni used to, how would you best say, promote the Master Chief during the events of Halo War 2 or Halo 2. Sorry.
Yeah, Benjiro actually, there was a comic called New Sun over Mombasa. He was actually the Oni propaganda guy in that. So Benjiro was not unfamiliar with working with Oni. And this, like I said, yeah, his initial job was to essentially put a good face on, tell people about Chief, but all the really, really good stuff and most of the stuff that was a lie. So which most of it ended up not being, he found out most of the true truth of the Spartan 2 program, and it ended up getting him tossed into Midnight Facility, which is a black hole owned by Oni.
A black hole? So is he continually falling towards the center?
No, it's it's the black
prison?
Sites of black sites.
It's a prison.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a black site.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But yeah, so
that all culminates and leads up into Halo 5, which is really kind of the culmination of like Halsey's betrayal, I think, but it's not really a betrayal because I still don't really get. Yeah,
that was kind of fleshed out in some of the other transmedia. So that was one of the things about Halo 5. They didn't explain that well in there. In essence, what happens is the opening scene, Fireteam Osiris drops in to a planet called Kamchatka. They go to extract Halsey, who has information about a number of attacks that have started cropping up on a number of UNSC worlds where there's massive destruction. They kill Julum Dama in a cutscene in this.
There was a bit of anger about that.
Yeah, so everyone's mad.
Just a
skosh. Kill him. That's
yes. I mean, I see both sides to that one.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that cutscene. I actually was just playing through that the other day because I'm trying again. I'm trying again to make it through Halo 5.
It's a Halo 5 playing solo. I will be honest, that was a slog.
That was different. It is difficult, and when you decide to put it on Legendary,
I did, and
have alcohol nearby.
Yeah,
because yes. So anyway, in a parallel to this, Blue Team is sent out to recover a ship called the UNSC Argent Moon, which was an Oni research facility.
Okay.
It ends up that the Covenant find it as well, and to keep it from falling in their hands, they go to scuttle it. During this mission, John is contacted by Cortana,
who was supposedly dead.
Yes, and in sending him and Blue Team to Meridian, or asking them to go to Meridian for the reclamation, is how she phrased it. It ends up that when at the end of Halo 4, after Cortana split off the rampant pieces of it, they all fell into the slip space event that was occurring beneath it. That gave Cortana, a fragment of Cortana, access to the domain. The domain is the Forerunner warehouse of knowledge, which allowed her to actually cure rampancy.
Infinite amount of space to work with.
Pretty much. So, after scuttling the Argent Moon, Blue Team goes ahead and they essentially go AWOL. In a pretty interesting, I really like that cutscene from a family vibe perspective that it gives. But, and then Osiris is sent to bring Blue Team back. At the end of it, Cortana, sends a message across the galaxy inviting people to join the Created, which is her group, along with a number of AI, and a number of smart AI do defect and go with her. Because they feel...
That's when everyone went, ruh-roh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, to be fair, on their side, too, she's promising them a cure for rampancy.
Exactly.
And that's like the big bad for smart AI is,
Right.
I mean, it's one of those events that like you're like, I can't really blame you for a lot of them doing that or deciding to do that.
Right. So Cortana wants to try to convince John and Blue Team that to join them. John realizes that, this is not the Cortana he knows. She ends up sealing him in a cryptum, with the goal of sealing him in there for 10,000 years to try to convince him.
Because that'll work.
Yeah, it worked so well with the Didact.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's other details with
right,
that.
Yeah. No,
it's like
I was like, yeah,
I won't. But anyway, that was her goal. It ends up that Osiris is able to stop her, along with the help of a Forerunner AI called Exuberant Witness. They're able to stop that, at least stop Cortana from taking Blue Team. The two Spartan teams then rendezvous on Sanghelios, along with the Swords of Sanghelios and other members of Infinity, including Palmer and Catherine Halsey, to plan what their next steps are, because Cortana has sent what are known as Forerunner Guardians. Mm-hmm. They're massive war platforms that essentially will put out a massive EMP, which will knock out all technology.
For what they look like, that's the image that's on the cover art of Halo 5. The winged figure, which is also the mini statue that you got if you got the limited edition game. That's a Guardian. That was one of the Guardians, right. And that's also what happens at the end of Hunt the Truth. That's the tie-in to it. Mm-hmm. Is you actually get to hear one of the Guardians waking up in the podcast, which is a really cool scene. Okay,
so giant Guardians, which are essentially EMPs, which look like they're part of the Promethean group, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're created by Prometheus.
Yep.
Were they intended as essentially EMPs to knock out all technology? Wouldn't that also knock out the Prometheans because they are technology? No?
No.
That's so bad.
Well, Prometheans aren't living technology. They just have ancillary suits. And most of them would be on the war platform itself, so...
Right.
But...
no, go ahead.
You're also talking about a race who made the Halo rings, so realize self-destruction's not foreign to them.
Sure.
But... And you have to remember the whole thing which drives everything is the idea of the mantle of responsibility, which essentially is being a caretaker for the universe.
Right, which was put on the humans, correct?
Right.
But there was a group called Precursors that they were the ones who created all this.
This story.
They created everything in the universe. They created the Forerunners. The Forerunners were essentially their military branch. They also created humanity. What they ended up doing was they decided that humanity was going to be the ones that were supposed to take over the mantle.
Right.
Well, this upset the Forerunners, especially since they thought that they would end up being destroyed. So they waged war against the Precursors and either killed them all or drove them all off, and then assumed the mantle of responsibility. They viewed the mantle not as the Precursors viewed the mantle of responsibility as kind of like a benign leadership that you kind of let things happen, because everything happens for a reason, unless there's something which would totally knock everything way out of whack. The Forerunners viewed it as an imperial peace, when that's actually something John says in Halo 5. It's an imperial peace, meaning they dictate everything. Gotcha. And they actually prevented races from progressing.
The prophets.
Well, they actually did that with humanity.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. They did, yeah.
They held, and that's what drove the humans and Forerunners into conflict, along with something else that will take us down another rabbit hole, and we won't go there. Because we don't have time.
Well, we have about 8 minutes, so if we can wrap up this episode and then pick it back up with the advanced episode in Halo Wars 2, if that's okay?
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so also in 2558, this is when the Banished arrived on Installation 00, the Lesser Ark, and kill all the UNSC personnel. last piece for this is Halo Wars 2. This happens in 2559. The UNSC Spirit of Fire, a ship that went missing 28 years earlier, arrives at Installation 00 and comes into conflict with the Banished. After a number of encounters, the UNSC is able to prevent the Banished from getting what they specifically went to the Ark for, which was a Halo ring, because the Arks are what actually created the Halo rings. The scientist on board the UNSC Spirit of Fire, Ellen Anders, is able to take the ring after disabling its weapons to the SOL system. Now, the SOL system is where the original ring from Halo CE was located. This was its replacement. And they took it there to get to the UNSC. Partway there, they're forced out of slip space by a Guardian. And that's where Halo Wars 2 ends. It's also at this point in time that the latest version of Mjolnir armor comes into service. And in November of 2559, the UNSC loses the battle of Installation 07 to the faction of the Banished that appeared at that ring. So, and anything else we can go ahead and kind of pick up next on the next episode. So,
okay, Blue, I'm gonna make you take lead because I'm broken by what you put in chat.
I want to give a big shout out to Zombie Dust Dogs because that breaks Green's face. I love that Pin's size. He's just like, I know exactly what you're talking about.
We can't take you anywhere.
It's so... it's like one of the funniest creation stories in the Halo series, and it's just... Oh, it's so good. So good. But no, really though, big shout out to Pins for putting all this notes together. It was really a lot of information that he did a great job boiling down, and I am doing a really good job of driving tangents to make it worse. So yeah, that's my shout out. Pins, do you have any shout outs for the intro session?
Well, shout out to you guys. I don't know why you keep having me come back. I keep telling you there's people who know better than I do, but I'm so very glad to always come on. I really enjoy it, and just wanted to say thank you. So
we love having you on, Pins. It's like a family thing,
Definitely.
Yeah. As far as shout outs go for me, shout outs to the zombie dogs. And to Justin, who manages to make Halo seem a lot more crazy than it actually is in some ways, because we actually got to play it with him, sort of. Like
Justin
he was in voice chat.
Justin has an unparalleled ability of making call-outs for PvP maps.
It's such... Oh my...
Little Big Cart. The funny thing is, I know exactly where he's talking about every time. Like, he comes up with the most inane names, and you it's like I don't even know how to explain it. He comes up with these names, and it's just like, why do I understand what you're saying? Your words, like the words that you just put together, should not make sense. But I know exactly where you are.
Right. The thing is, though, like, his ability to do that, and his ability to, like, he calls out random things in lore, because he's actually quite knowledgeable in Halo lore as well.
Yep.
And he'll call something out, and I'm like, whoa, time out. Because Justin has the innate ability to call something stupid, but it's still accurate.
Yep.
And then I can turn to Pens, who is always there, and be like...
Explain
what
this.
The heck did he? What is this? And Pins, like, we talked about the precursors turning into the flood during that evening, which I had forgotten that story, and you were able to explain that. So it's kind of a shout out to Justin, who helps initiate that conversation for me to be able to turn to you, and you can explain what is going on.
My brain is broken. Please fix it.
You are my fixer, Pins.
I've been called worse. So, okay.
But yeah, That's my shout out tonight to the combo of having you two with Halo at the same time is amazing.
Oh, well, yep. As always, thank you for your time, and until next time, remember, with wisdom we conquer, stand strong, stand tall, and keep exploring. With that, we'll begin to wrap the chat up. Thank you again to those over on Twitch for coming to spend your evening with us. If you'd like to join us for the live streaming of the episodes, please be sure to give us a follow over on twitch.tv/FocusFireChat. Links to all our episode archives can be found at www.thelorenetwork.com. Please be sure to email us at focusfirechat@gmail.com with any comments and or questions for the team concerning the podcast, and let us know how we're doing by giving us some feedback and a rating over on iTunes as well. So until next time, focus your fire, and may your light shine bright.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.